insurance department, we deal with all sorts of claims for education settings, from a child slipping over in the playground and banging a head, to a member of staff either slipping in the staff room or bringing a claim for stress. The whole range of claims we deal with. My experience in the years that I've been working within education claims is that there is so much pressure these days put on teachers for targets, grades, people well-being. There's just so much pressure time-wise that often when such accidents occur in schools, any sort of investigation can be put on the back burner because you sort of think, it's not that important, I've got X to do, Y to do. Well, it is really, really important. And I wanted to share with you today 3 or 4 things that I think are quite important in dealing with these claims. Firstly, document everything. That is if you don't do anything else, do that. A child has until their 3 years from their 18th birthday to bring a claim. So that's when they are 21. So imagine you are in a primary school and a child is 7. That is a long way into the future when a child could potentially bring that claim. Members of staff may have left, and even if they haven't left, that is a long way to remember back. I can barely remember what I did yesterday, let alone think that far back in time. So it really, really is important that you document everything following an accident. If you could have some sort of pro forma that you could fill in terms of your accident date, circumstances, and any photographs, they can be really key in helping to defend a claim if they're applicable. And statements. So get statements from any pupils or staff members involved. Which brings me nicely to my second point, which is in relation to statements, stick to the facts. That is so, so important. I have just recently dealt with a claim actually where a child was stabbed in the eye with a compass by another child. It was a complete freak accident. It just flew out of this child's hand but caused quite severe damage to the other pupil's eye. The school took multiple statements from the children that were in the classroom at the time. The member of staff wasn't actually present, so she, and this is key, she didn't witness the accident. And in fact, this was when she came into class and saw the aftermath of the accident. This is the first time she'd seen both pupils involved for the first time that day. All the pupils gave statements and confirmed that it was a total accident and it was not intentional. And there was no mention of this pupil's behaviour prior to the incident happening. However, when the teacher made her statement, she said that apparently this particular child had been messing around with this compass all day. Now, this statement was made pre any litigation, which means it's disclosable, which means we then have to send it to the other side. And that puts us in real difficulties in defending this claim. This child could potentially have been messing around with this compass, but the other side wouldn't have known that had it not been in the statement of the teacher. And it wasn't necessary to be in that statement. She should have just literally stuck to the facts that she witnessed. Next, you need to make sure you keep up to date with all your risk assessments, keep on top of everything. I know that things like this have probably gone a bit on the back burner because of COVID, because you had so much to do in relation to that, and I appreciate that. However, they are still vitally important. For example, an asbestos risk assessment needs to be kept up to date. As well as dealing with insurance claims, we also deal with health and safety executive prosecutions. And it's important to note here that where there has been a breach, the fines aren't covered by your insurance policy. They would come directly out of the school's budget. So for asbestos, there doesn't need to be actual harm, or for any prosecution, in fact, there doesn't need to be actual harm. There just needs to be a risk of harm. So if you've not kept up to date with your asbestos risk assessments and they then find there is a risk of harm, you could then be fined, and that fine is going to have to come out of your already extremely tight school budget, which you want to avoid if at all possible. My final point is that we expect claims following this pandemic, not necessarily to be COVID related claims, so children or staff having caught COVID as a result of being at school. For a start, it's hard to prove. Secondly, we would hope that you have done everything you can that's reasonable to keep the pupils and staff reasonably safe. But what we do expect to be quite prevalent are stress claims. COVID has put an unbelievable amount of stress and pressure on teachers who were already under an overwhelming amount of stress and pressure already. So my final point is contact. It's so important that you keep in contact with your members of staff. If one of them, for example, has had a positive test for COVID, make sure you just drop them an email. And this would go for a stress claim in relation to an employment stress claim, as well as for a stress claim in the civil courts. Keep in contact with them. It takes 5 minutes just to send an email to say, I hope you're okay. And staff that receive this are far less likely, we have found, to bring a claim, because if they feel like they're being listened to, they're less likely to be in that mindset of wanting to bring a claim. Whereas if they're simply ignored, and I heard of a case recently where a staff member had a positive test for COVID, and at the start of term, they had signed a document to say they would not go within 2 meters of any members of staff. But when this staff member then was tested positive for COVID, she wasn't contacted at all by school. And she has felt quite aggrieved by this. She felt like the head or the school business manager or somebody should have given her a ring, firstly to check that she'd been okay, and secondly to check that she'd actually not been within 2 meters of another member of staff or a pupil. And it takes 5 minutes out of your day to make that phone call or take an email, but it can then make a difference of thousands of pounds if then you're not having a claim for stress. The final thing I wanted to just say, and this isn't in relation to insurance, is just well done, everybody, to all the teachers, to all the school business managers out there, the heads, everybody working in an education setting. You have done so well. The amount of guidance that has come out over the last few months that you've had to keep abreast of, and I know because I've read it all, there is a heck of a lot. And often it's come out very last minute. I just want you to all give yourselves a pat on the back and a well done from me, because I just think you've all done brilliantly. I hope you found what I had to say useful, and I hope you will all put it into practice. Thank you.